9/11, I'm working in a trade center. I've been a Wall Street broker now over 30 years, but at that time, I'm working in Building 1 Trade Center, Tower 1. And I was also in the building in 93 when the bomb hit. There was a bomb in the basement, so my office had some experience. So the plane hit the building, and we didn't waste time. We have an office of about 400 guys. Got up, went right to the stairway, and we ran down to 26 flights. And the firemen were running up as we were running down, rest their souls. And
You're listening to When God Intervenes, the podcast where faith, hope, and healing come together for families with a loved one battling addiction. Welcome to another episode of When God Intervenes. I'm Daryl Rogers, your host, and I'm here with Dave Mahler today. Dave has a really interesting story. He is a ground zero survivor and has an interesting story there that we'll get into. And Dave, I'm just trying to remember all the details about you that I have looked at online. And I know you do a recovery coaching. Is that right?
that's right. And thank you for having me. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I do recovery coaching, and I also do substance awareness presentations. And usually my title is Breaking the Stigma. So substance use awareness and breaking the stigma. I speak at corporate locations, churches, organizations, anywhere where I can bring that word.
Tell us a little bit about your ground zero experience, if you don't mind.
9/11, I'm working in a trade center. I've been a Wall Street broker now over 30 years, but at that time, I'm working in Building 1 Trade Center, Tower 1. And I was also in the building in 93 when the bomb hit. There was a bomb in the basement, so my office had some experience. So the plane hit the building, and we didn't waste time. We have an office of about 400 guys. Got up, went right to the stairway, and we ran down to 26 flights. And the firemen were running up as we were running down, rest their souls. And when I got to the lobby was melted. I mean, there wasn't any carpeting, wall treatment, everything was gone. A fireball had shot through the lobby, and they guided us out the hotel that connected to the trade center. And I actually saw a police officer that I grew up with. I hadn't seen him in years. And he's like, cover your head. And I said, okay. He goes, stuff's falling down. But we didn't think it was a terrorist action at that time. We thought it was an accident, private plane. And when I got out of the building, the second plane was right above my head. I mean, I could read the numbers on the bottom of the plane, so like clear as day. And that sight you see on the TV when the plane is turning into the building, I was directly underneath it. And I didn't know what to do. I decided I can't run straight. My thought process was glass is going to fall down. So I ran to the right, which was towards the East River of New York. And when I got there, I saw ferries going back and forth, or at least one. I said, I can get on one of those boats and get out of here. But I had to walk back towards the trade center to get on one of those ferries. Unfortunately, when I got close to the building, um, I had the experience of seeing people jump. They were on the higher floors, and they had no choice. It was either burn or jump, and I guess some chose jumping. And lasted with me until this day, I guess. I was going through some therapy for something at that time, and I saw a therapist, and she goes, I really can't counsel you right now. You're full of PTSD, and we got to work on that before we can get to any other level of anything else. So that's my quick but brief 9/11 story. But it still affects me to this day.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. I work with parents who have a son or daughter battling drug or alcohol addiction, and quite often there is some kind of underlying trauma with their child. Um,
Sure.
Man, I haven't experienced anything like what you experienced that day. My closest thing the closest way I can relate is the experience of losing my oldest son. in a drug impaired wreck in 2014. And
Yeah,
um, yeah, so I can only imagine. I can only imagine, and I
yeah,
know first responders go through a lot. They
yeah.
see a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm really sorry that you lost your son. It's not to take over the conversation anyway, but
Hmm,
I lost my daughter due to substance abuse or substance use, and we are part of a club that we never wanted to join,
yeah.
and you know, and what can we do with it? How can we use our greatest hurt to help others? What do we? God wants us to honor Him, right? So we need to take this hurt and say, how can help the next child, next adult, next sibling, next parent, spouse. What are we going to do with it? That's going to be, glorify God in this, in our greatest hurt.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Giving back to others and trying to help other parents who are going through the same thing has been very healing for me. I've done a lot of prevention speaking, that sort of thing. But yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
ask you, but I had seen that about your daughter. So she was like 7 years sober. Um,
Yes.
yeah, and she just relapsed, or
Yeah. Dana was doing great. She worked in the industry, actually. She was a behavioral health tech. She worked at a women's facility. She took, women to court dates. She helped them get their families back. I tell people I still get calls and emails today of women that she helped get into treatment that, they had no money. She would call up and get them scholarships. She just knew how to work the phones, work the system. But she was a lone ranger. She thought that she had it beat. She didn't work a program. She didn't have any accountability partners. There was no sponsor. No, she just thought I can do this on my own. And we're not meant to heal alone. Like James 5:16 will tell us, confess your sins to one another so you can heal. And we're supposed to heal in community.
yeah,
And she just isolated, and in the end that's where that got the best of her. She went out, she used, I don't know if you mind if I tell a brief story about it. So she was living in my home in New Jersey, and I spent time between there and New York. And she went out and used. I mean, she came and told me, I'm having an issue, and she went away to a treatment center. And when she was finished with the treatment center, I said, you can't come back to the house. So she went to live in a woman's sober home, and then COVID hit, and nobody knew what to do. So what do we do? We had no idea. So the facility called me and said, we'd like some people to go home and quarantine. We just have too many women here, too close to quarters. And I was afraid. And I said to them, are you sure Dana can come home? And they said, Dana runs all our groups. Dana runs all our programs. She's knows she's very well versed in how to do everything. Run a recovery group, run 30 people in the room and questions and answers. So they said Dana's one of the people where we feel can go home. We're confident. And me and Dana made plans about getting some food in the house and a few other things. And she said she wanted to spend the day with her friend, and they were going to take a hotel, her and her girlfriend, and stay there for the night. And because they were going to quarantine from seeing themselves for 30 days, and Dana never made it home. She went out and got some drugs before meeting her friend. Her friend had no idea. Her friend wasn't a drug user, and she admitted to her friend she took some drugs. They tried staying up all night, and the friend found Dana in the morning in the bathroom, and Dana was gone.
hmm, hmm. Sorry. Um,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, so many stories I've heard like that, Dave, and unfortunately, but I'm sorry for your loss. And I know, being a dad and having lost my son, our, our son was only a year and a half that he battled addiction before his death. So wasn't such a long road, but it's very painful. So I understand it's not something that ever you don't ever get over that, right? You just learn how to carry on one day at a time, and just live your life
that's
one
right.
day at a time and keep moving forward.
People tell you that time heals all wounds. this isn't a wound that time is going to heal.
No.
Like I said, we just try to do the most with it as possible,
Hmm.
and to help the next person. And a little bit about her story. She didn't use any great amount of drugs, but the drug she took had fentanyl in it, and 2 milligrams of fentanyl can kill you,
Yeah.
and that's just what happened.
Yeah, and the fentanyl is everywhere now. I mean, that is really the landscape when it comes to substance use has really changed since it was really 2014, 2015 when I started began getting educated on things a little bit, and the landscape really changed over that period of time. When once the fentanyl began to be so pervasive. So tell us about. So, are you in recovery yourself? Are you?
So for me, I always thought I was just a codependent enabler,
Mm-hmm,
which I was.
mm-hmm,
Um, my ex-wife, rest of soul, she passed away, but she had developed an alcohol problem when we were very young. And I was running to the liquor store, buying the bottles just to keep peace in home. And, no, our neighbors wouldn't hear us arguing, but they heard us. We weren't fooling anybody. And so I thought that was my role in it until I went through 12-step programs later on, because I run a Christian 12-step program. And I said, if I'm going to run this program, I need to do the steps. And actually, I've done them twice. And I found out stuff about myself I never was underlying. Like, I had smoked weed every day for 25 years, but I didn't think I had a problem. And uh, working on Wall Street, I dabbled in a lot of different things and just staying up at night, a lot of drinking, a lot of entertaining, taking clients out. And you thought that was the thing to do to, have a lot of drinks
mm-hmm,
until my daughter got in trouble. She got in trouble in high school for just like a weed type situation. And when she was going to get grounded, she went right into my golf bag in the garage and pulled out a bag of weed. And I said, "How are you guys grounding me for weed? This is my father's." And I'm like just crushed. I'm like, "Oh my God." And I just stopped, any drug use back then. I didn't stop alcohol. Um, I never felt that I was controlled by it. I could drink or not drink. But I knew I had to stop. So I just stopped everything. So am I
mm-hmm.
in recovery? Yes. But I didn't really think I was in recovery until just a couple of years ago.
Something changed a couple of years ago. You just kind of had the epiphany. You just
Like I
realized.
said, these steps showed me that, boy, you did have a serious issue. And not only did I have an issue with the drugs and alcohol, anger, and all these other things that come up along the way, and even being too sarcastic to people thinking it was funny. And,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't funny, you know.
I kind of jumped right into this.
That's fine. That's a
Started
good way to
right off
go.
with the whole 9/11 story and everything. But and by the way, my wife's birthday is September 11th. So every year, now it's like, that's just kind of a crazy day to have a birthday on now,
Yeah.
but
God has a strange way with things. Um, so I'm married now, 10 years, almost 10 years,
hmm
and have a great marriage, thank God. And my daughter's birthday was August 26th, and my current wife's birthday is August 26th.
wow.
So it's a double-edged sword that day. I love to celebrate my wife, and at the same time, I'm like, oh, it's Dana's birthday, and I'm like,
Mm.
I don't know what to do on that day. Sometimes I'm just like lost.
Yeah, our son that we lost, in the wreck, Chase was his name, and his birthday falls on November 22nd, which a lot of years that's Thanksgiving Day. Not every year, not
Sure.
this year, but a lot of years it's Thanksgiving Day. So that's kind of is odd, But you live in New Jersey. I'm assuming that
I spend my time between New York and New Jersey. I raised my kids in the suburbs, Jersey, but I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York.
hmm
And my wife owns an apartment in Brooklyn, so we live there. During the week, it's kind of we do both. We both work in Manhattan, so it's just easy to get to work from Brooklyn. And we Jersey's like quieter and more things to do on the weekends and great beaches. So Friday nights we pack up, go to dinner. We actually I teach a Bible study on Friday at 6:30, and after the Bible study, I drive out to Jersey, and that's where I am now. Yeah.
So, and how did you become a stockbroker? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I'm what they call a foreign currency broker.
Okay.
It's funny. I could tell friends and family that for the last 30 years, and I show up at a party and they're looking for a stock tip, which
Yeah.
has nothing to do with what I do, but that's fine.
Uh,
Um, my brother-in-law, he was a trader for Chase, and when I got started, basically you just needed to know somebody, and they could get your foot in the door, and basically they tell you, either in 6 months this job is for you or it's not. And I got in the door, and it was totally for me. You pick up the phone, you can conversation with people, uh, build relationships, and the trading part of it, I just had a knack for. Um, and yeah, so it was through a family member,
hmm
and it's been a great career.
That's usually the best. That's usually the best way. If people get started with a new career, it's usually through someone they know, right? It's usually that's how you
Yeah,
find jobs most of the time and the best fits.
I'm actually transitioning out of that in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I have one more year, and then I'm going to full time coach. I'm coaching like five guys right now,
Uh huh.
and with working full time, I could probably maximize at six. It takes a lot of time. I get prepared for each guy and what
Mm-hmm.
we're going to talk about, and I just don't go in it blind.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of time and preparation. I think more than six, I couldn't do it properly.
Right.
So I think in November of next year, I'm going to walk away and coach full time and see where it takes me. It's God's plan. I got the plan. God guides the steps. I think that's where I'm headed. I want to do at least one or two substance awareness presentations each month. I've had some opportunities, and again, I'm like this A personality. I want to do everything right now, right away,
Yeah.
and it just hasn't been happening as quickly as I would like it.
Uh huh.
And I've been invited to speak to five different churches to give these presentations. I just did one this past Tuesday night, like 70 people there. It's funny how I'm all prepared, I'm ready to go, and 2 hours before, I'm getting a little nervous. I'm like, why are you getting nervous? So one of my partners that I call accountability partner, I call him. We start praying, and he's like, "You got your material. What are you worried?" And I'm getting at same exact time. I didn't even ask her. My wife was sending me prayers and text, you know, and I just start praying to God, give me some strength. I know I can't speak without you being there on my side, helping me. And I went, and it was going to work out great. And I'm not one of those guys to give the enemy too much credit. I believe that first it's our flesh and then the enemy, sees the foothold.
Mm-hmm.
But we're all ready to go. I use Google Slides to my presentation, and it's like 5 minutes before I'm supposed to get up and speak. And the tech guy at this church goes, "Your computer just crashed." I'm like, "What?" So all my slides are on there, my whole preparation. And we brainstormed that within 2 minutes, I was able to log into the church's computer through my own Google account. And we did the presentation. My slides came up on the church's account. But it's funny how for that moment, it was like, what am I going to do now? I'm just going to give a presentation without any slides and wing it. But
Yeah, it's interesting how that works sometimes. You just like you just have to problem solve in the moment, right?
quickly, yeah,
And sometimes those things, God gives you he provides the words, right? And God gives you
yeah,
what you need. And some of those work out to be better presentation. I wanted to ask you. I got a couple other things on my mind here that I want to talk to you about.
sure,
One, I want to ask you, and I'm going to mention both of them so I don't forget. I do want to ask you about your coaching. I think we'll get to that next. Exactly, a little bit more detail on your coaching and how people
sure.
can get in touch with you and all that. But before we get to that, The title of the podcast is "When God Intervenes," and I don't get into it with
Yeah,
every person, but I would like to hear a little bit from you about your spiritual walk, about your walk with God, and
sure,
how that
100%.
plays into your current situation.
Well, I'll give you a few parts to it. 20 years ago, I'm in Florida. My daughter Dana, she's a big part of my story. I'm visiting her at a treatment center, and I said, Dana, I really feel like I got to pray for you. She's like, Daddy, what do you pray to? I wasn't a believer at that time. And my ex-wife was, her mom was, I was around believers. I just didn't really want any part of it. I was like, I golf on the weekends. They just want your money. It's not for me. And Daddy, what do you pray to? And I'm like, I don't know. She goes, well, they send us to a Christian church. It was in Palm Beach County. And she goes, why don't you go? No, okay, I go. It's a big church. And the pastor was an ex-football coach. And he gave this message. And I had never seen an altar call before. And I felt something different. I felt the Holy Spirit, not that I knew what the Holy Spirit was back then. It was like tapping me on the shoulder, and I'm eager. And here's this altar call. And boom, I am right up to the front. And I accept Christ that day, thinking that, okay, I'm going to receive Christ, and all I'm ever going to get out of this is a place to pray for my daughter. I was wrong. And they told me what should I do next? Or read John. So I read John on the plane back to Jersey, and I go to the church where my Assembly of God church in our town, where my ex-wife had been going. I meet the pastor. He goes, "Oh, we've been waiting for you." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, after service, I said, I read John, and now what?" He goes, he was a little bit sarcastic but funny. He goes, "Read it like 5 more times, and then me and you'll go have some lunch." I'm like, "Okay." It was amazing, how my daughter was the one to plant the seeds, Daddy, why don't you go there? And then the walk just started evolving. I went on a Wednesday night for Bible study. There was another guy from Brooklyn there said, hey, you want to come to men's breakfast Saturday morning? And I was like, yeah. He goes, do you know how to cook? And I am a cook. So he's like, I said, sure. He goes, oh, show up an hour early. You can help me. And all of a sudden, I was the co-leader of men's ministry. I was like, how'd this happen? And it took a few months to become that, only out of knowing how to cook, and
Uh,
and then things started. We became involved in special needs ministry, which we're still involved in. We'll have a Christmas party next week. Actually, we have 100 families coming. Uh,
wow.
so big special needs get together. But I never expected it. And then again, so I run a Christian 12-step group. It's like a Celebrate Recovery. We just changed the name for whatever we call it, Life Recovery. But when I was getting trained by the people from Celebrate Recovery, after the first or second training, I didn't think it was for me. First of all, I didn't think I had an issue.
Hmm.
Second, I didn't realize that program was for any kind of hurt or habit, hurts, habits, and hangups, not just drugs and alcohol. I called my daughter, I said, Dana, I don't think I'm staying with this. I don't think it's for me. And she's like, Daddy, you got to stay. Someone like me is going to walk in the door. Someone like my mom's going to come in the door. You've been through every war with us. You're going to know how to talk to people. I'm like, okay. My friend who was running it used to tease me. He goes, you're going to run this program. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm like, Frank, I'm here to help you. And that's it. So Frank had to leave for different reasons. A woman took over. She had to leave. Then COVID hit. We were going to close the doors. And I spoke to the pastor, who's also been a friend of my family's for years, and even before I was saved. And I said, he goes, why don't you run with it? And I'm running with it. And again, if my daughter didn't tell me to stay, I would have been gone the second night. So whenever I'm up there leading the lesson, she's right beside me. I know she is, you know. So that's a lot about my
That's
walk.
awesome. Yeah, yeah, that's a good story. Yeah, I've spoken at a Celebrate Recovery. I was just drawing a blank there for a second.
That's all right.
I've spoken at Celebrate Recovery. There's one in a local church here that's invited me several times to speak over the years, and yeah, I always enjoy going to those. I always stay for the meeting, afterwards
Yeah.
after I speak, and they're really good meetings. And I would highly encourage anyone who is battling addiction or in recovery from addiction from any type or in recovery from any type of situation to attend, to check it
Yes.
out and at your local.
We're all going through something,
That's right. We're
right?
all recovering from something,
And
right? Yeah.
and like you said, after the lesson with the small group is amazing. And we
Hmm.
split up men with men, women with women. My wife actually facilitates the women's group,
Hmm.
and I never heard guys share so much and get stuff off their chest. And it's a mix of guys. We're about 15 men. Half of them have an AA background, so they know all about the steps from a different way. And we have one or two guys that have done both, so it's really a good mix. And one of my leaders has done both, so that helps a lot too.
Hmm.
But I tell people sometimes, because people bring friends and stuff to the big lesson, and I'm like, if you think you're not dealing with anything, you may be dealing with lying. And they're like, everybody laughs a little bit, but it's true.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody, you're right. Everybody's got something, right? Everybody has some kind of issue they're dealing with. And yeah, it's a really good program. Celebrate Recovery from everything I've seen. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your coaching services, different types of coaching services you offer, and how you can help people.
So my website is groundzerorecoverycoaching.com. It's kind of long. I probably should have created a shorter one, but it's working. When I first got certified to coach, which was quite a few years ago, I thought I was going to be just coaching parents, or spouses. I said, well, think about all the mistakes I made. What tools did I not have in the beginning? And just try to, help with resources. What level of care does your child or spouse really need? What kind of treatment do they need? And help people with that. But I found that I had a knack to coach men mostly. I think right now I'm only coaching men. I don't know if I'll coach women. I have a few women coaches that I'm friends with that I would probably refer out to them and they'll work with me. Help guys redirect, they're new in sobriety. What can there's a big difference between being sober and being in recovery.
Mm,
You can be sober, and that just means you're not using or not drinking. And people use a term that's not the greatest, but like a dry drunk or they're jaywalking. Okay, I don't use, but what am I filling up my time with that I used to use? What positive things am I doing? Do I go to church? Did I join a gym? Am I doing any kind of breathing exercises? What am I doing now that would help me not use? And sometimes it's simple things like every guy that I coach, I always ask them, single guys, this happens mostly with, do you make your bed in the morning? And everyone says no. And and I try to get them, okay, make your bed every day. A small task like that is just gets people organized. Do you eat at the same time each day? Uh, and every guy is like, no. Try to get a regiment there. I help them build structure in their lives.
hmm.
But another part of my coaching is you can pretty much text me anytime during the week, and I'm going to call you back. I'm going to talk to you. I encourage guys to get accountability partners. I do encourage AA as well as Celebrate Recovery because it has a lot of structure, and that's the biggest thing is you can find somebody you can call there. Get a phone list. Have guys you can call, and if you can't do that, call me. You know, I'm not like a therapist, which a coach is definitely not a therapist, where your appointment's Monday at 7, and I don't see you or speak to you until Monday at 7. I'm available to my people that I'm coaching.
Hmm.
Don't call me at 3 in the morning because you don't know what to eat for lunch tomorrow. But if you're having an issue, I'm getting on the phone with you. We're going to talk. I got to come out and meet you if you're a local person because I do coach all over the country by Zoom. But if you're local and I need to meet you for a cup of coffee, I'm coming out. You know, the last thing I want to do is see somebody fail. You know, and a lot of times in recovery, people talk about we need to have relapse prevention tools, a relapse prevention plan in place, which is true. But I like to call it differently. I like to call it We need to have recovery power tools in place
Mm,
because
I like that.
relapse prevention is almost like we're thinking about we're going to fail already.
Yeah.
But how about we're not going to fail? We have tools. We've learned things. We Some guys are coming out of treatment. They've learned a lot of tools not to use, but they're just not applying them. The simplest thing as sitting down, feet grounded on the floor, using a breathing technique I may teach you may stop you from using just because that urge only lasts like 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But we
Mm-hmm.
need to redirect. And I teach coping skills like that, and it's a lot about what my practice is about. How do we redirect? How do we fill our time up with positive things? Even if you're not like an artist, take an art class, step out of your comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
do things that are different. Join a basketball league. They have them for all ages. Everybody's playing pickleball. A lot of orthopedic surgeons are happy about that. But there's plenty of stuff you can do.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the guy that gives a speech to? He gave a speech about the whole title of the speech was "Make Your Bed." He was a Navy
Oh
ass.
yes, I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of my clients actually sent that to me after I told him to make his bed.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's really good advice, and he has a whole book based around that, the whole concept of
Yeah.
make your bed, start with that one thing. But yeah, that's great advice. Let me ask you this. So, my audience is mostly parents, and the biggest part of it is moms, but is
Mm.
parents who have a son or daughter battling drug or alcohol addiction. And it's usually moms in their somewhere around 40 or mid 30s to 40s up into their 70s. What would you say to parents who have a son or daughter battling drug or alcohol addiction? What kind of, is there one or two tips that you could give them, or what kind of things would you say to them if you could?
I think you need to ask the questions of where your person's at. I call me qualifier, the person that's using stages of change. Are they ready to seek help? Are they still in denial? And you got to see where they're at first, because just because you want to, as a parent, push them in treatment, they may not get well. You know, you may have to ask them to leave your home. Setting up boundaries is super important. What's going to be acceptable in my home and what's not? And you got to stick to them. You also need to get your own help. Anybody who has somebody in their house with a substance use disorder, which is better than saying somebody who's addicted, because we need to change the language, and that's how the stigma gets broken, needs to get their own program, like a Naranon, like an Al-Anon, because the whole home will heal better if everybody's getting help.
Yeah.
And that's going to lead to longer, uh, long-term sobriety for the person in your house. Because when somebody's using, the whole house gets turned upside down, no
Mm-hmm.
matter what. So, okay, so what do we do now? We need to get tools. We need to say, how am I going to deal with this? Because we don't have the information. People are professionals. But I remember walking into an Aranon group 20 something years ago. I was embarrassed. I didn't say, why am I here? And I quickly found out that there were people in my industry there. There were blue collar workers there. There were doctors there. There was a rabbi there because his father was a cocaine addict. I was like, I can't believe, so that got lifted from me, like thinking, who's here? Everybody's here. And then I didn't feel alone anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I developed tools like, you know, that's just not acceptable in my home. I can't write the bed, take care of that bed check again. There are things you just can't do. And, because I don't believe in that, oh, they have to fall to their bottom. That's not the way I think.
Right.
But there has to be consequences for actions.
Yeah.
And the consequences generally lead to people getting help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
And I could coach moms, no problem. What I would offer moms if they called me for coaching sessions, especially on Zoom, I think that would be a comfort zone for me. We do it on Zoom and we talk. Because if I'm going to do it in the room with a lady, a woman, I'm probably have my wife with me. I just think that's the best place to
Right.
be.
Yeah.
But on Zoom, it's a different dynamic, and I would try to just teach them about resources.
Mm-hmm.
Who are we going to call? What's our first action? You know, and go from there. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I think that's about all the questions I have for you. Give our listeners your information again, just so they
Sure.
can find you.
So my website is groundzerorecoverycoaching.com, and my email is david at groundzerorecoverycoaching. And it's easy to find me. You know, you Google search Recovery Coach in New York. Recently, I've been popping up, but just at Ground Zero Recovery Coaching, and you can find me. Send me a message, an email, and I will immediately get back to you. I'm quick to respond, and then we can talk about how we can move forward. And a lot of people I've been working with, you know, I see what works for them. Do we need to try to get into a 90-day, 12 coaching session type program? Is that for you? Do you just need short-term advice? Like, what do we need? Where are we headed? What for myself, or maybe for my son or wife or husband? And let's have a conversation.
Yeah. I just got one other quick question that I realized that I meant to ask
Fine.
you about. It's really about I have clients who are family recovery coaching clients who are parents, with a loved one battling addiction, who sometimes are looking for a recovery coach for their child. What kind of things should they look for if they're looking for a recovery coach for their child?
I think people that have the conversation with coaches, interview them, see if they. I generally offer what I call a free coaching session,
Mm-hmm.
and it's usually like a get to know each other type thing. Maybe it says it's like a half hour, but they always lead to being closer to an hour, where we talk and we see if we're a right fit. See if that person fits what your needs are. See if you feel comfortable with them. See if there's honesty there. Is it all about the dollar, or is it just, a passion for them? You
Mm-hmm.
know, the, Coaching for me isn't my second career. Yes, but I think you know that this is a passion for me.
Yeah.
You know, I want to help the one. I relate to this as leaving the 99. Right, we got to help one first, and then that's it.
Well, Dave, man, I really appreciate you being here today and just being on the podcast. And I've really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better. I'm sure my listeners
Thank you.
have too. And I'm looking forward to keeping in touch with you and have an opportunity. Maybe we can talk again in the future and do some work together.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, any of those people, have them text me or call me. I'm ready to have a conversation.
Okay. All right. Good deal. All right, Dave. Thank you for tuning in to When God Intervenes. If you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Your feedback